Good evening! Welcome to the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast for June 2022. And as you could hear in my voice, video games are back. Last month, it was just me and SomeColorMage, and we had nothing to talk about, and it was really sad, and it looked like the world was going to be terrible. This month, the world is even worse! Unspeakably horrible, awful things all around us. A sense of utter depravity and lack of control, and nobody stepping in to do anything, but there's Final Fantasy. And E3 kind of happened. E3-ish. What did you all think of the E3? Oh yeah, I need to...
That sounds so exciting, but that was amazing. Congratulations.
Okay, oh yeah, I need to introduce my other people, sorry. Catuse, you're here.
Hello.
SomeColorMage.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
And Technobliterator.
Yo, what's going on?
Okay. What did you all think of, quote, E3, end quote?
Good. Like, I think the gaming industry is starting to catch up with the fact that, you know, they've been slowed down for the past couple years, and I'm happy with what we saw. I'm quite happy with it.
That's it?
Yeah, I mean, like,
okay.
it's just, you know, there's nothing really to complain about, you know. I mean, I guess there's a minor complaint of, like, why are they making a Last of Us remake when it was only 2 generations ago, and the graphics are pretty good? But I know that I'm a hypocrite, because I'm still gonna buy it.
Oh, you don't necessarily need to buy it. The game's... I mean, if you own the game,
I don't need to.
you can play it on your PlayStation 5 right now.
That is true, but I'm also an idiot.
Okay.
I'm a sucker. So I'm gonna buy it.
I mean, these are words you're saying. I'm not necessarily saying them. Alright, we are all pressed for time because, unfortunately, we're all adults and scheduling people for even ridiculous podcast things requires a lot of finagling. So why don't we start with Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah.
So,
this was the one I was most happy about.
It is. I mean, Technobliterator, you wrote or rewrote basically our entire Final Fantasy VII section. I wrote it originally, then you erased it and made it better.
I didn't erase it.
You made it better.
On what you did.
Yes.
Yes. I built on what you did.
Blue wrote the compilation timeline, Techno wrote the remake timeline.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Look, when I came around, we didn't even have a Fort Condor page. I might have created that one.
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
So, this was a week ago now? No, a week and a half ago, right? I don't know what time is anymore. But Square Enix announced a stream for Final Fantasy VII stuff. They did not tell us what it was. It was supposed to arrive at 6 p.m. It was 5 minutes late. The stream ran very poorly. It did not have subtitles originally. Then it stopped. And then they started over.
And then on YouTube, when you turned it on, regardless of what language you have the side set to, it defaulted to German for some reason.
It was one of the messiest streams I've ever seen. They announced like 3 things, and then you're like, when they ended with Crisis Core Remake, you're like, oh god damn it, this is what it all was for, just for Crisis Core Remake. But no! Final Fantasy VII Remake 2 Rebirth.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, for those who might have seen the stream that the 3 of us did, like, you know, we were streaming the event, and it's so funny because I have this whole, like, you know, the stream was about to start, and I had that whole pre-stream rant of, like, man, I think the FF7 community are just hyping themselves up for disappointment. I think they're just, you know, like, you know, the whole expectations that we're gonna see Crisis Core, and then we're gonna get a trailer for the new part. I thought, at most, we'll get the title reveal of the new part, and I didn't think we'd get a release date. I didn't think we'd get a trailer. I thought the whole Crisis Core thing was nonsense. I thought there's no way they'll do that. I thought maybe the Crisis Core thing was referring to the fact that it's an Ever Crisis, but then all of those things happened.
Yep.
Like, it was amazing. Like, literally everything I thought was never going to come to pass. Like, you know, I have never seen an event, like, blow away my expectations like that before. Especially not from Square Enix, of all people. Because I'm used to expecting, like, oh, you know, you think your favorite game is going to be in an event, but it's not. You know, it'll be at next year, and then next year, and then next year. But we got all of it in 10 minutes. So, you know, I really can't complain. Like, it was incredible.
Okay.
It's okay, Techno, because nobody heard your wrong predictions because I fucked up the audio and didn't notice until the 7th stream started and started playing audio out of the wrong speakers.
Oh. Yeah, I was in a car driving to Ohio, so I did not listen to your guys' thing. Sorry.
No worries.
Catuse, what did you think?
Are you talking about specifically about FF7 or are you talking about the E3 in general?
Anything you want to talk about.
Okay. So I feel like E3 as a whole. So after God knows how many years of coronavirus, I should not have been disappointed, and yet I still kind of felt let down by E3. Maybe I had overly high expectations, and maybe part of it was just because of Summer Games Fest just like soured the whole thing for me.
Oh,
there wasn't...
yeah. No, that was garbage.
You didn't like the space games? All the space horror?
I don't give a shit about Dead Space. Why is there like 10,000 games that are just the game Dead Space?
You have all the different flavors to choose from.
Yeah, they got vanilla Dead Space, chocolate Dead Space,
horny Dead Space. That's yeah, there's horny Dead Space. There's 2D Dead Space. I played a demo of that. There's a Dead Space game called, I think, Abandoned, that actually was abandoned and has been in development for 10 years.
Great.
Yep. Troy Baker Dead Space.
Oh my god.
Yep.
What I was gonna say is, I was, like Techno, very surprised at the amount of stuff that came out in the Final Fantasy VII event. I forget what it was called, the anniversary event. And I haven't actually played the FF7 remake because I don't have a console, and I was like, I don't really want to set up Epic Games Store just so I can play a game that I played when I was a kid. But now we have now Final Fantasy VII is coming to Steam, or it is on Steam already.
Oh yeah, that was another thing. I forgot to mention that.
We're getting a Crisis Core remaster for some reason, and that's kind of cool, I think.
We got to get into that.
And we actually have a guarantee that there is going to actually be a second part of the remakes. It was kind of starting to feel like, is there ever going to be a second part of this 3-part remake? And it's happening. So now I feel like, so at least for me, now I feel motivated to play the Final Fantasy VII remake. So at the very least, something did its job in the slew of games marketing over the past month. And that it sold me on the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Techno,
you were saying? How many years?
Yeah, we didn't even know there would be 3 parts. Like, you know, for a while they've been kind of like, oh, are there going to be 3? Maybe there's going to be 4. Or like, you know, people had all these wild speculation theories about how many parts there were going to be. I always knew there were going to be like around 3 because it just makes sense, right? You know, you're going to have Final Fantasy VII A New Hope, Final Fantasy VII The Empire Strikes Back, Final Fantasy VII Return of the Jedi. It's just
okay, so we're fighting Sephiroth with Ewok now? Okay.
I'm for it.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes too much sense that would be what the structure would be like to me, you know? But, yeah, like you were saying about it coming on Steam, that's another thing. Like, I didn't expect it to be on Steam this year. And instead they're like, no, it's on Steam right now. Or it was like, it's on Steam tomorrow. Something stupid like that. I'm like, big man. Like, you know, like, what did we do to deserve this? I mean, you know, members of our fandom harassed Najima, and yet you're still giving us all this goodness and acting like we deserve all this stuff? But
well, let's be realistic here. a member harassed Nojima, and everyone else told him to shut the fuck up.
Yes, we don't need to give air to one weird dude on Twitter because there's
we've
so
given that
much
guy enough attention on this podcast already. Let me just close out my thoughts on the June marketing blitz. We're going to come back to Final Fantasy XVI, but that's pretty hype. And there's also story-focused NFTs, which is not hype.
Yeah, I was going to save the news B-roll for the very end. But,
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Square Enix announced they were not going to spend their money on the sale of Eidos on NFT stuff, and then they announced later that they're making story-centered NFTs. At this point, I don't think any of it's ever going to happen. It's as likely as Musk going to Mars. It's something he says to make the investors happy.
I should note on that point, at one point, I didn't post this in the general channel, but I saw some people talking about, because I did know for a while that Square Enix did already have this mobile game that's Japan only, that was allegedly NFT tech, but people have analyzed it and there is literally no blockchain tech in it at all, and they're using NFTs to refer to an auction house.
Yeah, that's the thing. You could go and say NFTs or anything. It's just basically what's in mobile games already. Diablo Immortal is brutally monetized to a simply disgusting degree. And that could just be what's...
$540,000 to max out a character suboptimally.
Yeah. And, mobile games are bad, and they end poorly. It's a brutal world. But let's not talk about mobile games, because we have good games to talk about. Real games.
And we have to talk about one later eventually, but yeah.
Yes, we do. But Final Fantasy VII Remake, this is announced for... let me go through the other things first, then we'll go to Remake. How about that? So first they announced that Ever Crisis, we actually got to see that game for once. That is coming out this year. Sorry?
Yeah. I love the art style, is all I'm going to say for that.
Okay. It's kind of interesting, the art style, because what they showed is there's these kind of chibi-ish models walking around and it looks like original Final Fantasy VII. I think all the things they showed were from original Final Fantasy VII, not from any of the compilation things.
I think
there was a little bit of Crisis Core.
Yeah, there was a little bit of Crisis Core
in there.
Okay.
The Final Fantasy VII related stuff in there was also neat because they basically accurately recreated the maps from the original version.
Yes.
Same camera angle, same general design, everything.
Yeah, but what I love about it, my favorite part of that, is that they have an updated translation for the original script.
Oh.
Because Final Fantasy VII Remake is not the original script.
No, it's not.
It's they.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they completely rewrote the dialogue, not just in English but in Japanese. So now we're having a new English translation of the Final Fantasy VII script. Similar to how you had the Final Fantasy VI script and then you had the SNES translation, which was not as good as the GBA translation.
Okay, so we'll finally be able to decide that it's Aerith everywhere on the wiki, not Eris in any single spot.
Yes, that is true.
Okay. Alright, what I was I was trying to finish with the art style. What was interesting is they have kind of super deformed-ish characters, but then within the battles themselves, they are using the models from the remake, or a kind of scaled-down version of the models from the remake. It suddenly switches art styles, which, yes, Final Fantasy VII originally did that. But it kind of... I don't know, there's kind of a discontinuity I don't buy there, or I don't quite like. The other thing I have to wonder about is that this is a mobile JRPG. Now, I've played one of these that Square Enix announced, or made. It was Nier Reincarnation last year, and that was a JRPG...
Oh, God.
Yeah, that was a JRPG in name only. It was an auto-battler. It was very boring. I kind of worried what the combat's actually going to be in this. Because it kind of looked just like that, to me, a bit.
Well, it did seem to have more buttons to push, so...
Alright, I'll have to play this. I think we all have to play this. This is content.
Yeah.
I
I almost don't care how Ever Crisis plays just because, like, you know, everything else around it is stuff that I'm so happy we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I have a full expectation right now. I'm gonna go with the worst possible case scenario and assume it's literally just Record Keeper again, but Final Fantasy VII themed, and there's no depth to it. So it's literally just gonna be a load of gacha crap. And, you know, we saw Aerith and Tifa in different costumes, right? So I'm operating on the assumption it's literally just that. But even still, the stuff around it we're getting, like, negates that for me. Because I wasn't going in thinking, oh, Ever Crisis is going to be my favorite game in the series. So I'm just happy enough that we're getting the other stuff and expecting the combat system to be kind of whack.
I will say that just because there's waifu dress up doesn't mean that it's gacha. Final Fantasy XIV being, or Final Fantasy XIV rather, sorry, being the most notorious example. But let's be honest, there is a lot of waifu dress up gacha out there.
Yeah, we do already know that there's gacha in Ever Crisis.
It's going to be one of those.
It's not gacha for characters, so it's not the absolute worst type of gacha, but I mean, it can't be the absolute worst type of gacha because it's not fucking Union Cross. So
yeah, I don't remember what Union Cross was. Oh wait, that's the Kingdom Hearts one, right?
I would say,
yeah.
So many of these damn things.
My experience with Final Fantasy gacha games, like, I do think Opera Omnia actually does it really well. War of the Visions, whatever that is, the Final Fantasy Tactics ones, is dog shit. Like, as a gacha system, that's garbage. I hated that. But I do think Opera Omnia does it really well.
Yeah, so I guess we'll need to see more of this game in order to make a clearer decision, but it does appear to be a 1-to-1 question mark remake of the original game, and they also have plans. I think they did announce that they were going to adapt Crisis Core and at least Dirge of Cerberus, possibly.
Yeah, they said that they're going to adapt the entire thing and also add a new storyline about young Sephiroth.
Okay, I could do that. Ever Crisis, right? That's going to be in there?
Yeah.
All right. Were they... I guess they'd have to make Advent Children playable in order for this to make sense?
They do. There is a plan to do that, which I'm happy about. But we've never had that before.
Hey,
although, Advent Children, like, I mean, I don't really like it as a story, but so, you know, I'm kind of mixed on that aspect of it. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it.
Okay, that'll be out on phones this year. Yep. Sorry, I'm kind of hustling us, if you don't mind, because I know everyone's got hard out. So let's move on to Crisis Core Remake. This is looks like an exact remake of the original game, and will be out on everything this winter. Does anyone have any thoughts on this?
Not 100% exact, because, like, while, you know, the general gist of the combat appears to be the same, Zack's general movements and how he acts, and also enemy flinching and stuff, appears to be a lot more remake-like than Crisis Core.
Right.
Like,
is there a stagger? I didn't see that in the trailer.
No, there's no stagger, but there's, like, a lot of Crisis Core. I mean, I think you know this, I'm pretty sure
do.
You could basically just stun lock everything to death, and if they hit you first, they get to stun lock you to death. First of all, that doesn't seem to be a thing. Like, we could see enemies getting hit and them not being flinched unless, like, they get hit with a finisher or something.
Okay. Alright, so they might have added a bit more of that. What SomeColorMage, just to go back, let's rewind to 2008, I think was when Crisis Core came out. That game, you could beat the entire thing with 2 buttons. You hit square 4 times, then you hit circle to dodge. Square, you circle around behind the enemy, hit square 4 times, then hit square 4 times, then hit circle. Then the slots will come and solve all your problems. This is a game with slots constantly running in the top left corner, which will give you an endless supply of limit breaks, and also there's a heal one if you get 3 arrows, which will happen very frequently. I don't like this game, but lots of people do, and I think it has a place in history. With updated combat, it could be quite good.
I will say that, like, as far as like, as far as the whole remake remaster thing, kind like, for that, like, it does look like they're using remake models for it, like,
Yeah, they have updated the graphics.
Yeah, and it is a significant upgrade, right? It doesn't just feel like, the Type 0 HD upgrade, because that was not much of a leap. It was better, but, wasn't that big.
It was.
Right? Whereas, like,
Techno, you haven't seen PlayStation Portable graphics in a while, but they look quite bad. Okay. They are worse than you remember. So the full PlayStation 4 version of Type 0 looks a lot better than the PSP version.
Oh god, yeah. Even like slapping Dissidia Duodecim into a PlayStation Vita TV does not look that great.
No, there's a lot of pixel jaggedness.
I have played PSP games recently, but they were Ratchet and Clank, so that probably isn't a good like indicator for how Final Fantasy will look. But anyway, so I will say that it looks a lot better. It looks like an upgrade. I am really excited to play Crisis Core because I've heard all the different opinions on it. I've heard Blue's perspective on it, and the general perspective of there's a lot of Final Fantasy fans who weren't happy with it because, and they'll say things like the gameplay is repetitive and blah, 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 which is probably true. But they'll also say, like, they don't like what it added to the story because there's a lot of stuff it added to the story that's jank.
Oh,
but
Techno.
I've also heard the other...
Techno, sorry to interrupt. Can you introduce what Crisis Core is? Because I forgot to even explain what this game is. What's its plot?
Yes, this is a good segue to introduce what it is. So, Crisis Core is about Zack Fair. If you saw the black-haired guy at the end of 7 Remake who has the same Buster Sword as Cloud, right? So Zack Fair was Cloud's mentor, right? Well, kind of, right?
Yeah.
But Zack Fair was the precursor to Cloud. And the story is about what happened to Zack Fair up through to Final Fantasy VII, right? And as of Final Fantasy VII, he is deceased. So this is about his whole story up to that point, how he meets and falls in love with Aerith, because Cloud reminded Aerith of Zack, right? So that's where the mutual attraction came from. It's about all of that. It's also includes the part where Sephiroth goes mad, and the thing is, like, there are scenes in Crisis Core which were in the original game, so the scene of Sephiroth going mad and stuff, we did see that, but we saw that from Cloud's perspective on it, and I don't want to spoil too much, but Cloud's perspective he didn't exactly have the full picture, whereas Zack did.
And it's not like the English version of 7 Remake didn't already spoil that Cloud's perspective on all of that is completely wrong anyway.
True enough, right? So his perspective on it isn't exactly correct. In Crisis Core, you see the full picture of it, right? But I think one of the things about Crisis Core that does annoy a lot of people, right, and it's not gagged, but one thing that does annoy a lot of people that have seen is that it has a very different interpretation on Zack's death. Whereas Crisis Core, because you've had a whole game about this guy.
Wait, maybe we want to spoil the ending of this video game that maybe people haven't played that is coming out very soon?
I won't explain much about his death. I'll just say that he does die, right?
We do, yes.
He dies, and they make it a dramatic thing. They make it like a big event. Whereas in Final Fantasy VII, the original, you see a flashback of Zack's death, and it is completely unceremonious. It's just, he's running towards Midgard with Cloud, he gets shot, he dies. No last words, no, none of that. There's nothing dramatic about it. It's literally just he dies unceremoniously, and that's kind of the point. A lot of people like that Final Fantasy VII has a more realistic interpretation of what death looks like, because if you lost a loved one like that and they were just shot and killed, that's how it would feel. It's just 1 second, bam, they're gone. So a lot of people weren't happy with Crisis Core kind of changing that. So I guess I'm representing the two sides of the argument there, but I'm really excited in it because a lot of people say that they do really like Zack as a character, and he's very charismatic. He's a very he's a hero that people aspire to be. So that's kind of the other side of the argument. They really like Zack the character, but on the other hand, you have people who don't really like how it changed the lore. And there's also another part of the dislike, which is, there's a certain character in Crisis Core called Gact that we have a bit of a running joke.
No, Gact is not the character. He's the guy that plays him.
He's not called Gact.
He's played.
There's a character called Genesis.
Yes.
He's called Genesis, and he's based on Gact, and so Genesis sucks ass.
Yeah.
But
all right.
Anyway, so that's my. Yeah. Is that a good summary of Crisis Core? Would you say?
That sounds pretty fair. We don't need to. Maybe we don't need to burn the entire pod on Crisis Core because we're gonna need to do an episode on it when it re-releases. Yes.
Yeah. I think we can just sum it up as Genesis is kind of annoying, but Gact rules, and those who cannot come by themselves will absolutely come by his hand.
What?
What? He tweeted that one. He absolutely tweeted that out once. Jack is one horny motherfucker on Twitter, I tell you.
Okay, alright, just to explain, Gact is a real person. He is a Japanese pop star. Genesis is a fictional character who is, I guess he would be the cooler to Sephiroth's Frieza, if that metaphor makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. He's the Pepsi to Sephiroth's Coke. It's like, we don't have enough Sephiroths, let's go and make another Sephiroth.
Right.
What was I gonna say? I had a thought, and I lost the thought completely. Whatever, we can move on. We'll have plenty of time for Crisis Core.
Okay, yeah.
So, the most important thing, I think that there's a Final Fantasy VII clock you can buy. Did I imagine the clock?
Yeah, the Buster Sword clock, yeah.
Yes, for $300 or something absurd.
Yeah, if that had less of a price tag, I'd actually consider it.
I mean, you're spending money on worse things right now.
Oh, true enough.
Yeah. So, the main event of this Final Fantasy VII stream was Final Fantasy VII Remake 2. This is not the exact title, I just need to explain. It's the sequel to Final Fantasy VII Remake. It is now called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which they said will be out next winter. Now, next winter does not mean the winter that's coming next. It means the winter between 2022 and 2023. So,
so it could effectively be out, December 2023, or it could be out February 2024.
No, I don't think they said that. No, December 2023 or January, February 2024 or March.
That is what we... Yeah, and that's what we're expecting because the Crisis Core one was slated as this winter instead of next winter. And for fuck's sake, just put a fucking year on your seasonal announcement.
I'm going to say the entire English literary construct of next date is extremely confusing, and it needs to be tossed out. When you say next, it needs to be the next one in proximity. Do not tell me next Friday if you mean the Friday in next week. Just get rid of that.
When winter is 6 months away, I think next winter is the winter that's 6 months away.
Yes. So
right.
That's not Square Enix's fault. That's the fault of Johnny English, the man who invented English. So we got a 2-minute trailer of this thing. It wasn't all that substantial, but we did see clips of the famous Nibelheim flashback sequence, which happens in the next town that everyone was walking to, which is called Kalm.
Yeah, they kind of focused most on that.
They did.
I feel like most of the trailer was spent there, yeah. You had a lot of quotes from Cloud, where he was describing it, and then Tifa was like, wait a minute, so are you saying I should be dead? Because that doesn't sound right. Tifa gaslighting herself.
Alright, Techno, I'm going to rely on your expertise right now. When Cloud was reviewing his story, he tells the party the story of what happened in his hometown in Nibelheim. He does come across a
Yep.
point where he finds Tifa possibly dead. Does Tifa in the original game make that joke that, what did I die back then? Or is that a new line that they added in?
That is a new line that they added in.
Okay.
Like, you know, what actually happens in 7, the original, like around that time, is Tifa doesn't really interrupt him a whole lot. You know,
No.
the only occasions where she really interrupts him are like, if you go into her house, she's like, Cloud, did you go into my house? And then you as the player can say yes, and then go in and find the orthopedic underwear. Or
a
you
great
can just
gag.
say no, and then you get kicked out of it.
That's a
the
great
only
gag.
real time she really... That's the only time she really interrupts him. For the most
Mm-hmm.
part, she's kind of shy about it.
Mhm.
Like, because, and you know, we've generally interpreted that to mean as like, you know, she kind of knew it was bullshit, but didn't want to speak up for fear of like, you know, the repercussions of that.
You're
Like,
don't give
you know,
away too much. We don't know what's gonna happen in this
Okay.
version.
Okay. Well, so she kind of didn't really want to speak up because of the repercussions.
Mhm.
But so that is an entirely new line. Her
Yes.
interrupting him and asking, "Was I there?"
Mhm.
is a new thing that was added.
Okay. I have a overall theory right now. All right. I've been working on this for a little while. I haven't told anybody because I didn't want to burn pod. All right.
Yeah, actually, just before you say that, can I just add to that
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know, the one line of dialogue that she does have is, Barrett, would you please let us hear what Cloud has to say? You can ask questions later.
Did you say
So
that
if
in the
anything,
trailer
Marvel
or the original game?
She said that in the original game.
Okay.
So if anything, in the original, she actually discouraged interrupting him.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Okay. There's something happening with Nibelheim that is very important. So important that they're showing us the original events through Zack's perspective. And also, what was the last thing we saw in the Final Fantasy VII Remake? We saw Zack reborn. Zack is at Nibelheim. We're being retold Zack's story just in case you didn't play Crisis Core. Now you can. You can be caught up to all this. Nibelheim is big shit in this thing. Zack is going to be really important, somehow. I don't know how he's important, but it's very big.
Nibelheim is where a lot of stuff happened.
Nibelheim is the center to all of this, just like Jar Jar. So,
Just like Darth.
Yeah, I suspect that there is going to be something up with the ending of Crisis Core Reunion, because, like, first of all, the ending of Crisis Core is originally depicts an event that the ending of 7 Remake retcons. And also, it's fucking called Reunion. It's going to have some sort of critical thing to the plot, because why else would they call it Reunion?
I guess because
Right.
Remake and Rebirth have been taken and reloaded is too cheesy, and Resurrection did that
but like
last year.
everyone thought Reunion was going to be the name of one of the 7 Remake parts.
Well, did we? We didn't know they were going to be using this. Oh, by the way, Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is my other theory. So Remake, Final Fantasy VII Part 1, mostly 1-to-1. Now you're telling me you're doing a Rebirth. Now, Rebirth is not as faithful as Remake needs to be. And this, of course, is one of the major themes of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is them literally fighting against the canon of the original game in this bizarre metafictional soup thing. So I am thinking that we are going... we've known this for a while. We're going Evangelion rebuild right now. This one's going to start breaking from the plot in very significant ways. Zack at Nibelheim... What's ever happening at Nibelheim might be the first real major deviation.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, you know, I'll be honest, like, I don't like theorizing this too much, and that's only because I know whatever theory I have is gonna be totally wrong. So
I don't mind being
I
wrong.
don't like to... I don't like to offer my own theories too much, but, yeah, I can see absolutely the whole idea of, like, you know, we're gonna, like, diverge quite a bit more now. Like, I can definitely see that. Like, the other thing I'll add to it is that, can't remember who it was. I think it was either Najima or the other director who said this in the address, but he said, we specifically designed it so Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is one you can start with from scratch, you know. You can go into this game knowing nothing about Final Fantasy VII, knowing nothing about like anything else. You can just start from this one, and you don't need to understand anything else, and that's all you need going forward, right? So I think, that to me is quite telling that they are like, they do want this as kind of like the starting point. So 7 Remake was almost like a precursor to whatever this is going to be. So I do think it was really interesting how he said that.
I wonder if that's just marketing speak, because on a certain level, you want to sell as many copies as possible. I might be stealing this from Jeff Gerstmann.
Sure.
Jeff Gerstmann's new podcast, the Jeff Gerstmann Podcast. He mentioned that this is something they said during Mass Effect times, that you could go start 2 or 3 without playing the other ones, because you have to understand that if you're selling a sequence of games, you sold this many Final Fantasy VII Remake 1, that means that's the maximum amount you could sell for Final Fantasy VII Remake 2, and then it's just decreasing sales. It's always going to be reducing amounts. So they're going to say, you could start on this one, even if you'll be completely lost.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but then, you can look at, how is it that, if we go back to the Star Wars analogy, how is it that Return of the Jedi has better box office returns than The Empire Strikes Back? Although, I guess
VHS.
That's not really as good of a comparison. Yeah, I guess that's not as good of a comparison because, you can see a film more than once, but...
They also both had fewer box office sales than the original Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true. That
Significantly less, actually. Star Wars was record-breaking in its time. Neither of those movies were. Catuse, SomeColorMage, do either of you got theories?
I honestly, have no idea what's going on at this point. I mean, they've kind of been in the past kind of contradictory about this. The ending of Remake is literally about, throwing the established canon away, allowing them to manipulate events as they need to. And yet they've also said, we'll probably still hew closely to the plot. Which, sure, but at the same time, there are still several minor adjustments you can make that can cause things to go completely off the rails.
Yep.
You don't need to go full rebuild of Evangelion and have one plot point just deviate so critically that the final parts are so completely divorced from the original context that you no idea what's going on. Although I wouldn't put that past them either, that Remake Part 3 is just something completely original because something happens in Rebirth that throws off the plot entirely.
Catuse, do you have any thoughts?
I'm not sure.
Not sure is fine.
I keep coming back to this. I've just been listening this whole time. I keep coming back to this. You're saying, you need to have... Square Enix has to say that you don't need to have played the remake to play Rebirth. And yet, if this is a completely new experience, the impact of it being so different will maybe be lost if we can't assume that people have played the original Final Fantasy VII. And I think most people who are playing this game probably haven't played the original Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, that probably is true at this point.
There's a surprising number of people who played 7 Remake and had never, experienced the first one at all. It's great. I love that happened, but anyway, Karen.
I don't think it's that surprising. It's a old ass game.
25 years.
Sure enough, yeah.
How many people have played the original Crash Bandicoot?
I have in Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have played it, and it came out the year I was born, which was also the year that Tupac passed away. R.I.P. But good point.
Very good point.
And so I guess my takeaway is, if Square Enix wants these games to be accessible without having a million prerequisites, then it's hard for them to completely deviate from the original story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it also means that you're even more free at that point. If you completely break it, then it's like, oh, you don't even need to play the original story. Though, they're also selling Ever Crisis, which is the original story, so there's a lot of gears happening
That's
at
true.
once. I
Also,
don't...
pretty much every single platform you can get Final Fantasy VII on that too. So.
Yeah, so, alright, I don't
Wheels
think
within
there's a
wheels.
grand strategy of every single burger that they're selling adding up to one giant mega burger. I don't... Maybe I'm reading that the wrong way. I do want to talk about one other thing, which is, this has now been officially announced as a 3-parter. Now, strategically, if you were going to remake Final Fantasy VII at the pace that remake was going at, it could not be 3 games, because they only adapted about the first 6 to 10 hours, and it is a 30 to 40 hour game. They would need about 4 or even 5. Assuming they make a game that is just all post-game stuff and you doing chocobos for 40 hours or something insane like that. How much of Final Fantasy VII Remake do you think is going to be in this?
I do have a theory on that.
Uh-huh.
Right. I do have theories there. So my theory is, like I said at the start of the podcast, I think they're going to Empire Strikes Back this one, and I think we're going to end when Aerith dies. Either that, or we end at Northern Crater, right? So we end, Cloud's lost to the live stream.
I think that'd be a good place to end, actually.
Yeah. And the reason why I say this is because I think that, well, first of all, it's just common for any trilogy to do an Empire Strikes Back in the second one, but the main reason I think that is because it just makes a lot of sense to me that we don't get the airship in this one. We get the airship in the final part.
Do you think we'll ever get an airship? I don't think we're ever going to get an airship, the way this game's structured.
No, we're gonna get an airship. I mean,
We might get an airship menu.
Yeah, we'll get Final Fantasy X airship when you can go and fly back to certain locations, maybe to do side quests, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever will.
Like,
I'm saying like. Sorry, go on.
If the breakpoint is the Northern Crater, and I do agree, unless they modify the plot heavily, those 2 points are the 2 most natural breakpoints. One of them being such a natural breakpoint that it was the ending of the first disc. I think like if we were to use the Northern Crater breakpoint, then there's that would make, in comparison to the plot of Remake, that would make Rebirth like the longest part of the entire thing, just mapping it to the 7 plot. So a lot of part 3 would be essentially flying around doing all this various shit. You could basically have the side quest structure of Remake, but instead of having 6 quests in this one zone, you can basically just have them spread out across the entire planet and just use the airship to go wherever you want, do the various parts, do the various things.
Right.
I should specify there will be, there has to be airships for the plot. There will definitely be a Highwind. When I say airship, I mean specifically the JRPG trope of you unlock this thing that lets you go anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, it would absolutely be an airship in the style of Final Fantasies without a world map.
Yeah.
So, like 10, like
or
12.
Yeah.
My personal, my personal hope for that, and this is never gonna happen, but if they were to do an airship, how I would want it to be structured is like this. So, the world is done in zones, like the FF12 style zones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the airship, when you're flying around in the airship, they treat it like, like you imagine if you're flying a real plane, right? And you look at the ground below you, you can't see it that well, because you're pretty high up. So, I imagine, you'd be flying around in an airship wherever you want, and then when you, decide you want to descend, that's at the point you go down through the clouds and whatever, and then you start in whatever zone you happen to be hovering over.
So the airship would be a
my
separate
ideal for how an
thing.
airship-
It was not one continuous world, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that'd be the smart way to do it, where maybe you have a
that's-
world as a single, like, object. So that way you could do the, there's a big airship fight in Final Fantasy VII where you have to go trace down a dragon.
The ultimate weapon.
Yes.
Ultimate weapon.
Is it
Yeah,
Ultima
that's
or
how you'd
Ultimate? It's
introduce-
Ultimate, right?
7,
it's
I think it's
ultimate.
ultimate.
Ultimate, yes.
Yes, it is ultimate for 7, but I guarantee the translation's probably going to change that. Because,
I doubt that
you know,
because
I
it's
think-
also ultimate in 14. Like
Oh, interesting.
everyone
Oh,
says
okay.
it calls it Ultima, but the in-game dialogue explicitly calls it the ultimate weapon.
What does the Ramaji say? Why don't I go
Oh,
check
okay.
that? Ultimate weapon.
Yeah,
I'm
let's
checking right
the
now.
airship's kind of... It isn't just ultimate weapon, because the airship is kind of needed for the other weapons as well. You need it for Ruby weapon, because you have to, like, barge into him.
Uh-huh.
And then you need it for... Oh no, you don't need the airship for the other
You need
one,
the submarine for Emerald.
weapon. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but like, you know, you think about things like the submarine and the airship. I think they were so crucial in the original game that they're gonna have to be back in some form.
Okay,
Right.
it is
I don't
Arutima
think-
weapon, and I think it's
Arutima.
Arutima weapon for all the other Ultima. No, it's. Sorry, I'm checking the Ramaji right now.
Atma for the other one.
It's
the
Artima
other one's
weapon
Atma.
normally, and then it's Arutima for Final Fantasy VII. So it is slightly different.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Atma for some reason, but that's just
It's
'cause that's what
Atma
Final
is the
Fantasy VI
Final Fantasy VI because of the
Yeah,
text
that's
limitations.
just the Woolsey
Yeah.
translation.
I think it's the little.
No, that
they
makes-
couldn't have the text so long, so that's why a lot of things are abbreviated. Everyone in Final Fantasy VI
Right,
has a
yeah,
name that's
that's why
only
they-
6 letters long for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the unused Kaiser Dragon in that is called Tsar Dragon.
Yeah. What was I going to... Oh, alright. Do you think that they're actually going to adapt every single thing in Final Fantasy VII, or are they going to cut stuff? Because I was doing the mental math
I don't
myself.
think they're gonna cut anything.
Uh-huh.
I don't think they're gonna cut anything. I think if anything, they're gonna add stuff because the whole justification for doing it in 3 parts was we don't want to cut anything.
Well, I was thinking, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking just how much of the world is left to be shown. There are something like 12 different towns. There's Calm, there's Junin, there's Costa del Sol, there's Gold Saucer, there's Cosmo Canyon, there's Wutai, there's Nibelheim, Icicle Inn? One other town that I can't remember that's around the ancient...
Gongaga.
Gungaga, yeah. And North
No,
Coral.
that's not around the ancient. But,
Oh, alright, so
yeah,
there's
North
11
Coral
then.
is the one you're thinking of.
Alright, so there's about
Yeah,
11
there's
towns.
quite a few.
There's 11
Yeah,
towns,
and then
and that's
that's, you know,
huge.
there's-
That's a huge amount of stuff to put into a video game.
Yeah, and then there's all the
Right,
optional
but-
stuff
but
like the
at
Chocobo
the,
stage and whatever. Chocobo Farm as well.
That's not a town. That's a farm.
Right.
You can leave that as just a farm.
Yeah, but yeah, there's like you know, and then when you're counting all the other dungeons there's a pretty decent amount there as well.
Not that many. Not
So
for a
there's a
JRPG.
ton of stuff left. Yeah, not for a JRPG, sure, but there's still like a decent amount where if we're operating on the assumption that each dungeon equals 1 chapter, like the first one had 7 remake got 18 chapters. So if we assume that we can reasonably assume, I think the 7 Rebirth will have 18 chapters and the first one will be the flashback, but
I think the flashback's going to
Yeah.
be beefy. I think it's going to be a big event. That might be like a third of the
The
game.
flashback in
I-
the original was really long.
It is really long.
yeah.
Yeah, like it. Yeah, it literally has a point where you can stop just to save because of how fucking long it is.
PlayStation
uh,
RPGs.
Each in the 7 remake, you know, despite all 18 of these chapters being in Midgar, each chapter is, you know, a fully realized area in and of itself, and several of these areas are combination town and dungeons, like, you know, the ones that
Yeah.
take place in the slums. Like it's just this one region, but they are both like all 3 of those slum areas are in and of itself a town and 2 dungeon areas. Like, they're not huge dungeon areas, admittedly, but that's what they are. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, I think that some of these towns and dungeons can be merged into a single chapter based on their proximity. And also, yeah, I think that, there aren't so many areas that 2 more parts couldn't cover all of them. And there'll be a ton of reuse in part 3 anyway, because, that's the part where you're flying all over the world. You get to go back to Midgar and all that. So a lot of that work will already be done, and they can just fit it in. And considering Square Enix was not afraid to make a 2-disc PS4 game, I would not be surprised if they're not afraid to make a 2-disc PS5 game.
I will say, like, the thing I'm most excited for regarding seeing other towns is, like, the towns had such super, like, interesting lore that as a normal player you'll probably just never discover, because most people don't bother to like mess around talking to all the NPCs. So like you go to a lot of these towns and you realize how basically the story behind all of them is how big corporate screwed them over, right? So the story of what happened in Calm is it was a mining town and all the miners were from Mithril Mine, but the mines got shut down, so now most of them are out of a job. The story from Underjunen is that, they were a fishing town, and then Shinra decided to put the port there, and that screwed them over. And, like, Costa del Sol that one's fine. But, yeah, you go to all these towns and Wutai is the more obvious one, because Wutai is, like, it was, like, a proud nation, and then there was the war, and now it's just a tourist trap. Like, so basically all of them is like a story of how big corporate screwed them over. And, I think it would be super interesting to like explore that in a way that like, they actually like cover it this time. Because if you think about, for instance, like, the ghost, the train graveyard, like, the train graveyard had no story behind it in the original. Or if it was a story that the developers just thought of and then just didn't bother to like elaborate on it, and now it does.
The train graveyard is a puzzle in the original game. It is one screen where you move some trains back and forth to get up. That's all it is. And they turned it into a 2-hour sequence. Yeah.
It's 2 screens, that's it. Yeah. And now it's like a full-ass dungeon that gets a lot of time.
You were saying? Oh wait, are you?
I kind of finished my point.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm excited to see how they elaborate on the lore for all these towns.
I think what you bring up is an interesting point, because all these towns, right? There's a sequence to how Final Fantasy VII breaks down, which kind of shows a sort of tension between what this game is and what it was. Final Fantasy VII is a classic RPG in the 90s mold of town, dungeon, town, dungeon, town, dungeon. That's how all the original Final Fantasies were up until 10, basically. And then they started breaking out. What 7 Remake is, that is a action, story, PlayStation style, action adventure, whatever you want to call it. It's not a traditional RPG. It is not like that. So I kind of can't imagine that the style of the game they made would allow them to just allow you to shotgun towns this quickly, where it's like, oh, now we're in Gold Saucer for 3 hours, boom, now we're in Cosmo Canyon for 3 hours. It feels like they want to elaborate and build on things so much that it's almost impossible for me to imagine that every single thing that happened in that original game can be translated into this new form, because it's just going to feel chaotic. If Gold Saucer is only 3 hours long, it just won't feel right. It has to be 10 hours. The adventures...
how are you thinking in terms of, like, when you say Gold Saucer, are you talking about, like, Barrett's Past as well?
There's a whole... there's a ton of stuff that happens in Gold Saucer. It's a huge thing. And that's about...
there's the Gold Saucer date. There's, and there's a shit ton of mini games.
If there's a new character, there's so much stuff that happens in Gold Saucer. It's an enormous location with like 15 different spots that would all have to be fully developed and built. So this is why I kind of wonder, is this going to be?
Like, you can't just shotgun through it.
Mm-hmm. Is this going to
Yeah, I see
be
what you're
just them, we're just going to take the old assets and make it 3D? Because you could do that, and that game would be complete. But obviously they have ambitions that are something different, so I'm almost at this point accepting that as much as I would love to see all those original Final Fantasy VII things happen on my PlayStation 5 with the best polish possible, that may not be with the game we're going to get. That we are going to go into Evangelion rebuild territory, maybe even as early as the Nibelheim flashback, and this game is going to be something different. It will have many of the same events, but it will be different.
Yeah, I can see that, you know. For instance, it might be like, oh, we still get to see, like, you know, Red 13's past in Cosmo Canyon, and then
Yes.
Barrett's past.
We have to
in
have those
Hyrule,
things,
but
yeah.
We have them, but they happen at, like, totally different points. Whereas
Yes.
in the original, it's kind of like back to back. Now, this time, it's like, okay, they both happen, but there's a completely different, like, order for it, if that makes sense.
I bet every single playable character will still be in there. Even if they don't need them, they'll manage to get HighWind into this game.
Well, they have to have Sid.
They have to have
And
Sid.
we know
Rocket
that we've
probably
already got
should be.
Yuffie, so the only person who's in question is Vincent.
We have to have
Who-
Vincent.
Yeah,
We're gonna
I mean,
get
we already know
Vincent. If
Kate
we go
fucking
to
Stivers
Nibelheim-
there. He was in remake. So
Yeah.
And the Deep Ground people were in remake, so we have to have
Yeah.
Vincent. So everyone's going to be there. They're all
Yeah.
going to be playable.
at some point, Genesis is going to barrel his way into the story of the remakes.
But does he have to, though? What if he didn't?
Yeah,
Look,
wouldn't that be a lot
I-
better?
Okay, I am going to bet you right now, Rebirth will have its DLC story. It will be about Vincent, and it's going to have fucking Gact.
Okay.
I
what was
Possibly
the-
actually fucking Gact. I don't know, but
I will
I
bet
can
you...
believe that it's DLC.
What do you want to bet that Vincent will be the DLC of the next game? We could make this interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to put a wager down? SomeColorMage?
I don't know what I can actually wager on. I was
$20 Steam game. $20 Steam
Okay.
game of your choosing.
$20 Steam game. Okay.
Okay. All right. I think that Vincent will be in this new game, and he will not be the DLC character.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
Yeah,
All right. Let's do this.
$20.
Handshake. The whole world's listening. We can't mooch out of this. Assuming that in the future there even are $20 Steam games. Why not?
Just assume
I
the
will
clapping
hold
I'm
you
making near the mic is supposed to be a handshake.
Okay. I reached my hand out, and I might have cracked my elbow actually. All right. How we doing for time, by the way?
I
I
have
can
to be out in about 15 minutes.
15
but,
minutes. Okay.
can go into
I
that.
can give
Yeah.
it about 45 minutes until I have to like temporarily leave. But if we're not done, I can come back like a half hour after that.
I think we can wrap everything up in 45 minutes. Techno will
Okay.
have to leave us early. Are there any final thoughts on Final Fantasy VII? Because this is not the last time we'll be talking about this. We'll be talking about this for presumably the rest of our lives at this pace they're going. At least 2027.
Not much to say except I'm happy with what we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I'm most excited for, other than what I said, the two
First Soldier
I'll
Season
say
3,
three
right?
things- Fuck that.
No.
3 things I'm most excited for. One is what I said, which is learning more about the lore of the new towns. Second is the soundtrack. You know, it was great in 7 Remake, and I'm sure it will be just as good in 7 Rebirth. Third is seeing how they elaborate on the combat system from Intergrade. I thought they made a huge improvement in Intergrade over the original, over 7 Remake, and you know I really liked what they did with the link-up attacks. I'm super excited to see what those look like. I think that it's gonna start off with some Cloud and Sephiroth link-up during the flashback sequence, and then we'll introduce the other characters into that. I think that's gonna be so exciting. So those are the 3 things I'm most excited for. But overall, like, they exceeded my expectations with this.
Okay. Anyone else have final thoughts?
I do also hope that Synergize does make its way into Rebirth because Intergrade's combat did feel quite good.
And Catuse, you didn't play it, so I guess you don't.
I have
to
not
comment.
played it. I don't have a comment on the combat.
Okay. I am hoping that there's a long sequence of playable Sephiroth, because that will make my childhood happy. Even though I was like 15 when I played Final Fantasy VII, I was still a child then, and I deserve happiness, I think.
Yeah, that's still exciting.
Yep. So we should move on to the next massive bit of news, right?
I don't think remake can possibly be edgy enough to have you play Sephiroth during his massacre in Nibelheim, but I have
No, it's not gonna.
really
That's
cool
not
if
the.
that happened.
That's not the thing I want. I want to be Sephiroth killing that big red dragon fight that you get, and then other things. But no, I don't want to kill random people. What? Why are you? Why would you even put that thought into my mind? I don't want to do that. Okay. All right, the next really big, enormous thing that will be the topic of discussion for years and years on this podcast, and that is that Tactics Ogre Reborn has leaked onto the PlayStation Store. This is incredible. This is very exciting news.
That's a good game.
It's a great game.
I shouldn't have laughed at that.
It is one of
should not have laughed at that.
It is one of the best video games, I think, of all time. Up there with Final Fantasy Tactics. I have never decided which one's better. It's a very tough decision. We know for a fact, when it leaked, it was a listing that leaked. So the game itself, we don't know anything about it other than that it exists and they'll announce it at some point. Actually, let's be serious here. The next thing is Final Fantasy VII times 2 plus 2, Final Fantasy XVI. We got the new trailer.
Yeah.
Our long national nightmare of suffering and misery and its speculation and everything else is over. The month started out literally the second day, PlayStation event. It was like the last thing they showed, but we got it. We have a new trailer for Final Fantasy XVI. It exists.
And the graphics look a hell of a lot better than the first trailer.
It does, yeah. Oh, man. So, we saw Clive. We saw lots of other characters. We saw summon battles. We saw regular battles.
Yeah, I will say that, like, you know, I've been mostly down on this game, but I'm still excited, just tepidly excited. And I was going to say that, you know, the information we've gotten from it does make me more happy. Especially the fact that there are, in fact, party mechanics. But I might be jumping the gun on that.
Well, alright, it looks... This has been the one big topic of controversy in this new trailer, is that it appears that there's not going to be any kind of party system. And, in fact, that...
It appears from the trailer, yes, but they have said there are some mechanics.
There's some kind of mechanics, but there will be one playable character. And is it announced officially that Clive is the only playable character?
It's not announced officially, but if that is the case, then that'll be extremely disappointing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, if assuming the, you know, my worst fears come to pass about the games, that is, you know, Clive is the only playable character, and they do another 15 on us where the other female characters have nothing else to do. Like, if that's the worst case scenario and that comes to be, I'll still enjoy it, but it just won't be my favorite game in the series. And I'll still just be upset about the fact that, you know, seemingly since 13 has just put them off, like, you know, ever giving us any female characters at all. Like, I'll be upset about that. But I'll still enjoy the game because everything else looks solid. You know, the setting looks great. The lore looks great. You know, the summons look badass as hell. Like, you know I'm gonna like it, and, you know, I don't think that Yoshi P's let us down before. I know I'm gonna like it, but it's just that whole thing just really disappoints me because, you know, my favorite game is Final Fantasy VI, which has a female lead, you know, and where Celeste is excellent. Like, Final Fantasy VII is one of my favorites, and Tifa and Aerith are my favorite characters from that game. Final Fantasy IX, my favorite is Garnet. This series has a really good track record with female characters, and it was way ahead of the rest of the industry. So it's really disappointing to me that it appears to be the case that Final Fantasy is regressing where the rest of the industry is zooming right past them. It's just really disappointing to me. I don't understand it.
Well, Techno
And
does.
My only theory is
my
that 13 just put them off it. Anyway, you can say what you want.
All right, yeah. Did you call me by my real name just now?
No, I didn't.
I heard Eric. It's fine. You can call me by whatever.
No, I said whatever.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No. All right, I understand on some level that it's great to have female playable characters, but does a female character in a story or video game have to be the person you're running around with in your controller to be a great character?
No, that is
Okay.
and that is a good point.
Because I can tell you there are JRPGs with playable female characters where the female characters are quite bad and pretty flat and disappointing.
That is very much true as well. Like, that is absolutely the case. You know, the reason why I say that, you know, I have lower expectations for how good they are if they're not playable in some form is because when you think about it, the most memorable characters in the series have, by and large, mostly been playable characters, or they've been the villain, you know, or in some cases, you know, in the case of Arden, he was playable and the villain.
Wait, Arden's
But,
female?
like, you think Arden is not female character. He's
What?
the villain. Yes. Yeah, like, you know, you look at, for instance, like Beatrix in Final Fantasy IX. She wasn't permanently playable, but she was a playable character at some point in the game.
For like a minute.
You know, like, yeah, for still a decent amount.
Yeah,
But,
I thought she was more memorable for all the ass, particularly your ass, that she kicked, and not for the moment where she, decides to stop kicking your ass for a minute.
Yeah.
True enough. That is also very true. Edia, Final Fantasy VIII, playable.
For a
Like,
minute!
You know, I can go on and on.
You,
What's that?
she's playable for a minute and it's not even a memorable section. She joins your party to, like, walk across a bridge.
Her most memorable section is the assassination scene.
Yeah, she's not playable in that.
Sure
She
enough.
joins the party, you walk across a
The
bridge,
assassination
and then
scene.
she leaves the party immediately. It's the thing with that character.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so this is
So,
getting kind of
broad
off topic.
trend-
Let me-
But my second reason for being disappointed on it is just the fact that, you know, we very recently had a game where there were 4 party members, all of which were male.
No, they
and
weren't.
The female characters in that were garbage.
15.
They were
So
hot.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought he was talking about
Yeah.
Chaos Game.
Oh no,
Alright.
no, I
Yeah.
don't mean that one.
Yeah, that
No,
was actually
like
half and
15.
half.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15, and even in the Chaos game, you know, there are female characters in it, but they are garbage, hot garbage. They are literally so bad.
Oh.
Like that. No, I mean, anyway, the only good character in that game is freaking Jack. But anyway, yeah. So like 15, the characters in that game got 0 focus whatsoever outside of literally the main 4 and Arden. No one else got any focus whatsoever. And you can say like, oh, well, 15 is a unique case because it has all the problems with the writing and etc. And I will agree with you on that. I will grant you that, right? But you know, so to me, the reason why I'm somewhat upset and disappointed is the fact that, you know, they just don't have an indicator to me that they've learned from that. Like, there's just nothing I've seen indicates to me, you know, we understand that many of your favorites weren't just the same anime boys that we've been giving you for the past 2 games, you know, so here we're gonna make a good character that maybe is something different. So far, I do not have an indication of that. Now, if there is, you know, if there is good representation when the actual game comes out, because I'm not gonna trust the trailers on this. Like, they said we were gonna like Luna Freya and we didn't. Like, if the game does come out and, you know, there are great female characters that are not playable, I will eat every single one of these words and I'll be singing the praises of this game.
Catuse has been trying to
How
say
about
something
this?
for
We're
a
taking
while.
Stupid bets.
Yep,
We're
Catuse.
taking stupid bets in this podcast episode.
Yep.
How
why
about
not?
this?
Okay.
I will bet you any game you want on Steam for at most $20 that Benedicta becomes like like much remembered and beloved character of Final Fantasy XVI within, let's say, a few months after its release.
We need a... All right. If you're going to make a bet, this is between you guys. I'm not getting involved in that. But we need a clear and measurable way of saying that she's a beloved character. How exactly are you going to prove that that is the case?
This is hard, actually.
It is hard, yes. Is it how much porn of her exists? Is that the question? That apparently is the benchmark. How much pornography has been drawn of a character to make them important and culturally relevant?
That is not a good benchmark.
I suppose that... I mean, I'm not sure if that's a valid thing because Aranea is definitely higher up on the tags than you'd think she'd be, but at the same time... it was at the same time as usually at the same time as the footer tag. So
okay.
Yeah, like Aranea, great design, terrible character. Well, okay,
unfortunately, there's no Fuda in Final Fantasy. I'm gonna have to cut this out.
Okay, I have something measurable. I have a measurable metric we can use, right? You know, so a recent game. Right, she's not a new character, but she is a beloved character. Jessie, she wasn't playable, right? And we know she was beloved because there were articles written about her in major publications.
Okay.
And because she was voted in fan polls. If those two things hold true, then I think, is that a fair condition for the bet?
Yeah, I think that's a fair condition.
I think that's a fair condition. I think we need a third party to decide this bet, which is between Catuse and Technobliterator. Somebody who does not have strings in this can go and decide whether or not the character is beloved based on their own perception. And I nominate, let's say, Skaith.
Yeah,
well,
I'm not going to take that on personally, although I will point out that, you know, considering it can take a while for, fandom, general ideas to coalesce, you probably won't be able to cash in on this bet until like at least a year after the game comes out.
Yes, 1 year later.
6 months, but a year is also reasonable.
A year? All right. We will
ask. Tell Skaith about his duty.
Yes, we'll tell Skaith. We'll tell Skaith on one of the podcast episodes. He'll have to go decide whether or not. What was the character's name again?
Benedicta, I think is her name.
Benedetta one, right?
Is it Benedetta?
Yeah.
Benedetta? Which one's she, by the way?
Benedicta, I think. Yeah, Benedicta Harmon.
Is she the Garuda one? Oh, okay. All right, Techno, Catuse, shake hands. It's all been formalized.
Okay, here.
Yeah,
I don't know what that did, but that's a handshake somehow.
It's all right. Digital handshake. It's been done.
And I'll let you guys be excited about this game, because again, there is stuff to be excited about. I don't want to be. I'm sorry to start off with a massive Debbie Downer, because there is stuff to be excited about, and it does look really good. It's just that one aspect is disappointing to me. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay.
And I will see you next podcast.
All right. Bye, Techno. All right. Techno, I believe, has left us now. Yes, there he has. He is now gone. So, what do we want to say about him now that he's not here? I think Technobliterator is our friend and a valid contributor to the wiki, and I'm glad he's here.
Yeah. I do agree that the situation does not sound ideal. And like, while they have, said, oh, you'll be able to give commands to someone else, they have very much implied that that someone else is Clive's dog.
Oh boy. I like a dog, though.
And wasn't there like a playable dog mechanic in Final Fantasy 15? Why is Final Fantasy a dog game?
In 8, you had a dog, and in 6, you had a dog. Wait, what was the dog in 15?
Wait, am I making this up? You could have the dog deliver mail or something.
Oh,
one of Luna Freya's dogs acted as sort of like a courier between her and the party, and then at the end of the game you could talk to him to travel back in time to so you could go back to the overworld map.
Wait, the dog could travel through time?
I guess. 15's writing is a fucking mess.
Wait, isn't Shiva in that game? Doesn't she turn into a dog? Because she's also Luna Freya's handmaiden. but she also turns
She
into a
might
wolf.
be. I don't fucking know.
I kind of remember someone turning into a wolf briefly in that game, and then she's also Shiva. There's a lot. Forget 15.
Yeah, well, I agree that the situation is not ideal. I don't think it could possibly be as bad as 15, because also this is the writing team of Realm Reborn and Heavensward, which is again not ideal with women. After all, the current lead writer of Final Fantasy XIV is still pissed off about how the original writing team effectively fridged Mombreda, because that was one of Ishikawa's characters, and they killed her off one patch after she was introduced.
Oh, okay.
She's still mad about that one. But it's still not as bad as 15 was.
I think one thing about 16, because I really like what I saw of 16, is that Yoshi P is out already. He's been giving long-ass interviews. Like, remarkably long. Like, normally with Final Fantasy...
that was a press blitz.
Yeah, it was. Normally with Final Fantasy, you get like a 2-minute trailer, and it's really cool, and that's radio silence for years. Instead, Yoshi P's out here basically telling his life story. And what encourages me is that there is a clear vision behind this game. They've been making it for a very long time. It turns out they've been developing it since like 2015. I think was one of the things that came out. But the fact that
it happened sometime during the Heavensward patch cycle, because the lower ranked members of the 14 team started taking over Heavensward going into Stormblood, and then like the current team, like Ishikawa's lead writer and everyone else, they fully took charge, starting with Shadowbringers.
Yeah,
and like that's also when the lead translator Koji Fox, he moved from 14 to 16 after Stormblood. They were doing this whole transition during that 4-year period, and I believe Yoshi P did mention that we started with about 6 people and then just brought more people on as we needed them.
Okay. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you know all that, because I didn't know any of it. But what I was trying to say is that the thing with 15, and we've been over how bad that development is, but it was a game that was bounced off hot potato. Ideas were left over, and unfortunately, in some of those cases, those ideas were whole characters. It's just like Luna Freya is just the most damsel in distress fridged disaster of a character you've ever seen. So I believe in this team to go and execute on all of their artistic ambitions. I don't think any of these characters are going to be left in the lurch. I think Technobliterator's worry about no playable female characters is a bit overstated. That there will be decent... I mean, it's Final Fantasy. It's a game where everybody's an anime person. It's not exactly groundbreaking in terms of representation on any level. Not really ethnically, not gender-wise, not sexually. We're just lucky that they've had male and female characters in the 90s. I mean...
And besides, I think I already said this in the Discord channel, but after that trailer came out, I saw a bunch of the lesbians in my Twitter feed go absolutely wild for Garuda, so they're clearly doing something right.
This is why I made the bet on Benedicta and not the Shiva girl whose name I can't remember. It's for exactly that reason.
I'm not sure if they've actually introduced Shiva's
I don't think they did.
Yet.
No, they introduced Garuda, they introduced Rock, they introduced Titan. It's strongly implied that Clive is a Ifrit. We know that Joshua is Phoenix. Which my theory is Joshua will die and then come back because Phoenix. Get it?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. We know there's Bahamut in this version. I think they introduced all the summons. So I don't think we've seen Bahamut's human.
There's Bahamut and Odin.
Oh, there is Odin. I didn't see him. All right, I should have rewatched the trailer.
Bit where Odin fucking parries Mega Flare with his sword.
Oh, that's cool. It was a very cool trailer. Also, one of the things about playable characters is that this is an action RPG, it appears. Like, it seems like they're fully going real-time action with this one, even more so than Final Fantasy VII, which is kind of an action game, but it's really just a JRPG with some action. It's complicated.
It is Devil May Cry with RPG mechanics.
That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that they just fully go, let's just make the best action game we can and tell a great story around it. The reason that you can't have a party with that is because if you have real-time action, that means you really can only play as one guy at any one point. Maybe you can play as the other dudes at other times, but you're only going to be playing as one person anyway, and all the other characters will be AI. And this is just how games are. In a lot of the interviews, the other team members, I think it might have even been Yoshi P himself, was kind of expressing what seemed like a bit of like sorrow or maybe bittersweet feelings on the fact that they don't have a turn-based battle system. But they're also like, man, this is what sells, dude. Like, this is a fucking HD, ridiculously expensive, cutting-edge game. We have to go and do what sells. And I don't think... I know Persona sells really, really well. I don't think that a turn-based RPG will sell the 20 million copies that I think Square Enix wants this game to sell.
Square is definitely a company that likes to compare their results to the best in the field. And when you're talking about turn-based RPGs, that's always going to be a losing proposition because number one in that field is Pokemon.
Oh yes, Pokemon, of course. But, you know, this is a party... It's a different kind of game, almost immediately, from what Pokemon is.
Right, of course, but Square being Square, that would probably be what their benchmark is.
I don't know if they've ever actually shown much interest in competing with Pokemon directly, except for, I don't know, 13-2. And Dragon Quest V, when they basically invented the idea of playable monsters. But anyway...
oh yeah, that's my entire thing. If they set a sales expectation, I do not believe that expectation to be based in any rational reality.
Yeah.
Because they never make a rational decision on these things.
The other thing is that this is the direction the series has been moving on. We have not had classic turn-based action in one of these games since Final Fantasy X-2. And even then, Final Fantasy X is the last traditional Final Fantasy game I consider.
Yeah,
10-2 was kind of different already.
Then, like there are only 4 main game series. There's the actual traditional turn-based, and 3 of those were made before I was born. So,
all right. So it's Shin Megami Tensei. It's Bravely Default now. It's Pokemon.
Yeah.
What are the other like? Are there any other real mainstays left other than those ones?
Unless you start counting strategy RPGs, not really.
Yeah, because Tales has always been action. Strategy RPGs, you have a lot of those. But yeah, there really aren't that many. Like, I love that kind of game, but it is old. So there'll be plenty in the indie scene to fulfill your needs if you want it. Yeah. This is a HD super game. It's a triple, quadruple, pentuple A game. So you just kind of, these are unfortunately the compromises you got to make, and unfortunately Party is probably going to be one of it. But hopefully it plays really good.
Yeah, and I am mentioning strategy RPGs because I have seen when people talk about this, like bring up Fire Emblem, which I don't really think that counts because those tactics games are a very different beast to what we're talking about.
Yes, it is.
And yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see like Final Fantasy XVI so far has been, the story has been built as like Final Fantasy Tactics, but with big glorious set pieces. We can finally see like Ramza opening the dam at Fort Bessalot and flooding thousands of soldiers in glorious HD, and we're never going to see a tactical RPG or a turn-based RPG that has like glorious set pieces like that.
Yeah. I don't think you could do it. You could do all those things you want, but again, it's a tactical RPG. It is a set limit on a niche. Fire Emblem is as successful as I think it even possibly could be. And the market can be manipulated.
Exceeded everyone's expectations on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can build a market if you want to. So Nintendo has been continuously investing in Fire Emblem, and it's grown incredibly more popular. And if Square Enix wanted, I bet they could swing the entire industry back to traditional turn-based RPGs if they made one that was good enough. But I don't think that's just the kind of game that Square Enix wants to make anymore.
Right.
It's been 20 years since Final Fantasy X. I think officially. 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I have gray hairs now. It scares me every time I see them. Were there any other big points about Final Fantasy XVI I forgot to bring up? It's coming out next summer.
Right. Yeah. So it's actually going to be a fairly loaded next year and a half, because we got Crisis Core Reunion in winter.
Yep.
Then 16 the summer afterwards. Mm-hmm. Then the winter afterwards 7 Rebirth. And then probably shortly after that will be 14 7.0.
And don't forget about Forspoken this fall.
Yeah, that's... I mean, we got to get that bitrate killing machine going.
Yeah, that did not show up at E3 at all. I'm slightly worried about that game. But they also did have a very big marketing blitz, like in April for that game, or May, so I can understand why it wouldn't have been at any of those things. I think it'll make fall. That's my bet. I'm not actually betting anything on it. I think it'll make that release date. I hope it's a good game. Oh, we also have Kingdom Hearts 4 sometime. There's no release.
Who knows?
No window for that whatsoever. There's a lot of Square Enix stuff. Live Alive comes out next month.
Oh, right, yeah,
the remake.
The HTD 2D Live Alive. That is...
Oh my god, I'm so
interested in that one,
stupid!
even if it seems like, a fairly straight remake of the SNES game. That
SomeColorMage.
That it's getting an official English release is big.
SomeColorMage, I'm so dumb. I was listing off turn-based RPGs. I did not mention the biggest and most important, the granddaddy of them all, Dragon Quest. Ugh. How did I forget Dragon Quest?
Dragon Quest is so turn-based, even their MMORPG is turn-based. How did we forget this?
God, we know that they want to change the paradigm in 12 in some way, but if they move away from turn-based, I think Japan is required to have a national day of mourning, so probably not.
I'll cry if the next Dragon Quest is not turn-based. Like, I legitimately will. It's the one series that I don't think should ever move forward. For any reason. It should just stick with what it does. Pokemon could break turn-based combat before Dragon Quest does.
Pokemon needs to do something different, because I think it's amazing that people have not gotten bored of the Pokemon formula, but people are going to get bored of the Pokemon formula. You heard it here first.
I'm bored of the Pokemon formula.
Legends has shown that Game Freak is willing to tweak the formula a bit, but I don't know how much they actually plan to go ahead with those changes, really.
I'm so bored of the Pokemon formula. I haven't played the last 3 Pokemon releases, and I'm eyeing the new ones. Honestly, they kind of look pretty damn good. I don't know.
I did play, was it Sword? But the last Pokemon game I played to completion is Heart Gold, so I don't think I'm exactly a typical case here.
Sword was so boring. Sword and Shield were just so boring. Alright, let's move off Pokemon. Are there any final thoughts on what we saw at Final Fantasy XVI?
I am fairly excited.
I think it's my most anticipated game that isn't Kingdom Hearts 4 right now.
Yeah, I'm looking through Zero L's great translation of Yoshi P's really long interview, and I don't think there's that much I want to comment on it. It was just a really exciting trailer, and we need to see thousands of people drown at Fort Best a lot.
Yep. I'm glad that there's a game that's... alright, I've had a theory, alright? And this could be just... I've had lots of theories this episode, but this could just be the last 17 years of my life dominated by Final Fantasy anticipation. I don't think I can live, as a person without a big Square Enix game on the horizon far off in the distance. Because all those years I spent pining after Versus 13 and Kingdom Hearts 3, I am emotionally just attuned to wanting one of these things coming. And I'm just glad there's so many of them. I don't necessarily need any of these games to come out. Dragon Quest 12 could never come out. I could just pine for it all this time. It'd be nice. All right, we should go over.
Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to say regarding 16. One thing Yoshida did say is that every sort of icon jewel is a different genre. So like one is like a first-person shooter, one is like a wrestling match, and that's the one I want to focus on, because if the wrestling match does not have live wrestling style commentary, that is an extremely missed opportunity.
Yes, that's in the trailer. There's very big, like, it looked like duels or like fighting game things where it's one summon against another summon. That's going to be a big break from the regular kind of combat that we see on the ground. I hope it's like Skies of Arcadia, where that game had a turn-based ship combat thing that was very cool. Skies of Arcadia is a great game. Everyone should play it. Anyway, we have a ton of news to get through, and SomeColorMage, how are you doing on time?
I at the very most 20 minutes.
We can do it. All right, so first off, end of last month on May 31st, the series producer Shinji Hashimoto retired. Officially. I think he was the like brand head guy for a while for Final Fantasy.
Yeah, he was like the brand manager.
Yes. He was basically at like the kicked upstairs retirement role at that point. There's a picture of him with a stuffed chocobo. I wish him the best. Thank you so much, Shinji Hashimoto. Next thing. This is from June 2nd. This is Sakaguchi, another big old-timer from the Final Fantasy series. He was complaining that he cannot get a house in Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah, him and the rest of us.
Yep. Even the series creator cannot get a house.
Look, you just gotta know the real secret, which is to play on the Australian servers.
Yep. Yeah, unfortunately he's in Hawaii, so... maybe he could in Hawaii. He might just be close enough. I don't know why I saved this bit, but this is a trademark that Square Enix officially dropped. It is called Titus's Cock.
What?
Yes. I think they officially... I don't know why. I don't know what it is.
I mean, it's just... There's probably, like, some, like, porn out there called Titus's Cock that they were really embarrassed about, and so they...
That's actually why. It's listed here, classification class 171, parentheses, to prevent use by a third party, end parentheses.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Square Enix, for letting us know that you actually own Titus's Cock.
They officially own Titus's Cock.
There's a lot of porn called Titus's Cock. Okay.
We keep going back to porn. That's another running theme in this episode. I'm sorry, children.
So that's the name of this episode, right? Titus's Cock?
No, it's not. It will never be that. I just wrote, Papus are in Final Fantasy XIV, exclamation point.
Oh, right. In Final Fantasy XIV, the one of the recent patches reintroduced Hildebrand, who is like the recurring joke story arc character who keeps nearly getting himself killed doing very stupid things and claiming he's investigating things. And like at the end of the newest content with him, after we managed to rescue him from the first where Shadowbringers takes place, he then immediately gets abducted by a poo-poo and taken to the moon.
Yeah, these are the blue alien guys from Final Fantasy VIII. Who I think... Yeah. Are they the ones that are related to Norg? The guy in the basement.
I thought the Moombas were Norg.
Oh, alright, that's it. Though I think they're all one species. They might all have, like, a crazy life cycle, I think is how it works.
Yeah, they might be. 8 story is kind of crazy, so...
8 story is. What was that guy's name? Morbius?
No.
Norg. Norb?
No.
Norg. Not Morb. Alright, we'll get to Morb. Don't worry, we'll get to Morb very soon. All right.
We are?
Yes, we are. We're going to end on Morb. This is the newest news. Oh, by the way, tomorrow there's going to be a Nintendo Direct. If there's anything at that, we're not covering it. We'll cover it in July. It was too late in the month.
Yeah, we can't delay this podcast recording another 14 hours or so.
No, we can't. I've been trying to get this done for a week now. Anyway, we must end, sadly, because we already went over the NFT news. We must end on the saddest news of the month. A beloved member of the Final Fantasy family is unfortunately coming to an end. And that is, which one was it? It wasn't Opera Omnia.
Keeper.
Yes, Record Keeper. Yes, all the great memories we've had at Record Keeper. The game will be ending. Service is shut down end of September. I think MTX, which I think means the ability to buy anything.
Transaction.
Yeah, that's ending in August.
And that's only global. There's been no indication that the Japanese version of the game is shutting down.
Yeah, so Yu Suzuki said, I sincerely want to thank all of our FFRK players, past and present. Blah, 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 blah. Celebrates his 35th year. I hope you'll continue to enjoy these stories for years to come. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Yeah. So that's the end of that. All you Record Keeper fans, you'll just have to play one of the 19 other Final Fantasy mobile games. And I will never need to actually find out what Record Keeper was. I completely forgot to remember, and now it's no longer playable. So that's the end of that. We have more Final Fantasies coming in the future. We have Final Fantasies ending in the future. The future is bright. But we now must talk about our near future, which is that this is a monthly podcast, and we've been putting off something for a very long time. Next month, it's the summer of Morbius, Final Fantasy. We're doing it. I've decided it just now.
It's Morbid time?
It's Morbid time. It's Morbid time, yes. The video game Mobius Final Fantasy. I am going to watch all those cutscenes, and I will be back to report on my findings. All of you don't necessarily need to watch with me, but I'll be there. I will watch all 14 hours of this, and I will return a changed man. May not be a better man, but I'll have morbed. It'll be BlueHighwind will be the new producer of this show.
Okay. Anyway, just to make sure this episode comes full circle, I just retweeted onto the FFWiki feed the gacked "those who can't come themselves will absolutely come by my hand" tweet.
I used to do Final Fantasy quotes, and I forgot to do it. That'll be our quote of the month. Oh, what a weird, horny episode this has been. Does anyone have any things to say? Catuse, SomeColorMage, did I forget anything? I don't know.
I don't think I've got anything left to add at this point.
Okay. I think I said everything I wanted to say.
All right. So that'll be that. Let me just vamp for a second because I gotta load up the videos. Oh my god, what a button did I press? There we go. All right. Maybe I'll edit this. I don't know if I will. I'm just gonna mumble for a little while. This will just be the thing because I need to load up. I forgot the music guy's name. Oh, here we are. All right. So the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast is the official podcast of Final Fantasy something website. This show was directed by me. I'm BlueHighwind. Our music is La Montana de los Caballos Jovenes, the Mount Koltz music, which is by XPRTNovice, which is off the Balance and Ruin soundtrack. Next month we'll be doing Morbius. I think that's all the things. Thank you so much for listening. This is a big episode. Not every month will be this big. And that's that. Right? Yep. Is that it?
Right.